I caught my chopstick in the hullabaloo there. Been real trepidatious about this one, but I decided I'm just going to do it. Welcome to Lampay's Poetry Corner. This is a project I've been thinking about for a very long time. In fact, this is probably the first project I ever really wanted to do. Back in the MySpace days. Probably would have given this its first go in like 2007. But it was a lot more difficult to pull off back then. I mean, we have video cameras on our phones now, and I didn't even get my first smartphone until, what was that, 2012? Something like that. I suppose when I first got started with Lampay Creative, I should have done this then, but I was more worried about writing things in the hopes that bringing people together would create streams of income, that artists would do the artwork for poems that I and other people would write, and we'd start to build up a community around finding ways of turning that into paying bills, that sort of thing. Never worked out like that, and it's never going to. But at least there might be people who are interested in poetry who can be a part of this in some way or another. The formatting for this is going to be reading poems up front and then talking about them through either professional or my own analysis. And I'm not going to tell you until the end who wrote them, because some of these are going to be some of the most important poets according to Western civilization or what have you. In the history of the English-speaking tradition. Some of them are going to be people you've never heard of, and some of them might even be you. Half of these poems are going to be done by people in my local area or that I've written myself. In fact, there'll be one that I've written in every episode. I'm also very quiet for some reason. Probably has to do with my recent GRE practice test results, which were not exactly inspiring. I feel a weird sense of almost dark reservation about this now. The trees are in their autumn beauty. The woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water among the stones are 59 swans. The 19th autumn has come upon me since I first made my count. I saw before I had well finished all suddenly mount, and scatter wheeling in great broken rings upon their clamorous wings. I have looked upon those brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight, the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. Unwearied still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold, companionable streams, or climb the air, their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest, wonder where they will, attend upon them still. But now they drift on the still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among the rushes they will build, by what lake's edge or pool, delight men's eyes when I wake some day to find they've flown away. I suppose the analysis can't go between the poems or it'll give it away because of the things that I'd have to say about it and where I got the information. It's harder than it seems. Everything I do on YouTube is harder than I expect it to be. Cast against the shadow lines, mysteriously the roofs all shine, with a strange and directed light that omits warmth to quash the weary gloom with white. Until that shard of hope so proud is suddenly concealed by cloud. Houses lose their brilliant shine, and without resilience divine, a sense of loss of hope that gives to one the will to cry. To remain and try and cope leaves me with no question why the sun has left the weary sky. I can see this all at last when darkness wide is finally cast. I see myself and on it that this thing will last. And I can tell this all because the shard of hope is forfeit. The gloom's again the way it was. I was going to read a friend's poem here, but I decided it wasn't very good. I have studied the tight curls on the back of your neck, moving away from me, beyond anger or failure. Your face in the evening schools of longing through mornings of wish and ripen. We were always saying goodbye in the blood, in the bone over coffee, before dashing for elevators in opposite directions without goodbyes. Do not remember me as a bridge nor a roof, as a maker of legends, nor as a trap. Door to that world where black and white clericals hang on the edge of beauty in 5 o'clock elevators, twitching their shoulders to avoid other flesh. And now there is someone to speak to them, moving away from me into tomorrows. Morning of wish and ripen, your goodbye is a promise of lightning in the last angel's hand, unwelcome and warning. The sands have run out against us. We were rewarded by journeys away from each other into desire, into mornings alone, where excuse and endurance mingle, conceiving decision. Do not remember me as disaster, nor as the keeper of secrets. I'm a fellow rider in the cattle cars watching. You move slowly out of my bed, saying we cannot waste time, only ourselves. The last one is called Movement Song. It's by Audre Lorde, the 1973 publication, From a Land Where Other People Live. That one vexes me a little bit. I even found a recording of her reading it and expected a breakdown of it. She explains several of the other poems, but her only explanation of that one is that it's a love poem. But there are things about it that I feel like could be interpreted in contradictory ways. But the way that I think about it, it strikes me as being a lamentation of a temporariness of a certain kind of fleeting relationship. Star-crossed lovers, essentially. Possibly even interracial lesbian couple in the 50s. Good grief. Very dramatic. You can't get much more star-crossed than that. But I don't know. Particularly the end. Watch you move slowly out of my bed, saying we cannot waste time, only ourselves. We have to give up who we are in order to live in a timely fashion. Or we have all the time in the world to waste away. The first poem is The Wild Swans at Coole. It's about the poet W.B. Yeats, one of the most famous poets in the history of the English language, looking back at 20 years of changes in his life while the swans on the water at Coole seem basically the same, and about how age and wisdom and a kind of mourning of youth and emotion is not reflected at all in the natural world surrounding him. You're probably going to hear a lot of Yeats on this thing. Short of Hope is, of course, mine. That poem is written in a style extremely melancholic style. Very teenage poetry, which is appropriate because I wrote it when I was 15. And there's an interesting story around it because it was an assignment and the teacher forgot that they had assigned it to me. Although they expected the assignments to be given in prose, I gave it in poetry. I would have thought that would have made it memorable enough, especially because I presented it to the class. They asked for an anthology of work from students to put into the Borah High School publication. And I submitted it, assuming that it was a shoo-in because they had said they'd liked it. when I first wrote it. But their response was that the last thing a publication from the high school needed was more sob stories from teenagers about breakups. The assignment was to describe what I was seeing out the window when we were sitting in class early in the semester, the beginning of fall. And in Idaho around that time, usually there's a tremendous dip in the temperature. Suddenly, autumn comes in sweeping with a vengeance. Briefly, because after a week or two of that, the temperatures will soar back up into the 80s for a while, so that you're never sure exactly what's going on with your heating and air conditioning and how you're going to manage your life. It's pretty much Idaho weather most of the time, frankly. But on this occasion, the weather had started to become very unpleasant very quickly after having been quite comfortably warm. In fact, too hot a couple of weeks before. So this sudden cloudiness and darkness and coldness was sort of like poignant. And so when I looked out the window, I looked at the roofs of the houses across the street, and I was seeing the clouds coming together and parting. And there was this moment where light coming through those clouds shined a strip of light across the tops of the houses before it went dark again. And basically what I'm saying is there's this little moment of warmth ahead, but eventually winter's coming. I know many people who are poets, and if any of them are watching this, I would invite them to give me poetry to have me read on the show. I've taken a little extra time to explain, in this instance, what the show is. You can probably expect one of these every other week, if not every week, because these are a lot easier to make than the other shit I do. Although that might change if I decide that I have to have graphics or some nonsense, or appease you in some other way. We'll have to see. For the time being, I don't know if I'll write a piece of music for this. I don't really have time to hook up all the equipment to record it. I might try and throw something together out of loops with Studio One. Might give me the excuse to learn more of it. I guess for now, having filmed this is going to have to be enough. I don't know when I'll get it up. Eventually, I'm sure. Thank you for your time. And scatter wheeling in great